How can we release the joy of being a Quaker by simplifying how we do things? How can we reduce the burden of administration that's landing on a small number of friends? How can we do things differently to free up time from running Quakers for being Quakers, for our spiritual life, for building our community, for outreach, for witnessing the world, and for generally having a bit of a life? Hello friends, I'm Jonathan. I'm a Quaker from Watford Meeting in Hertfordshire in the east of England. And I've been working for the last 2.5 years for Britain Meeting in a project to find and share answers to questions like these. In this Simpler Meeting series, we're going to be looking at ways that we can be doing things differently to make it simpler to be a thriving worshipping community. The topics in the series cover roles, ways for small meetings, meeting without a meeting house, ways of spreading the load for trustees and treasurers, how area meetings can work together or merge parts of their structures. And we'll do some imagining of new things we could be doing with Zoom. Today's session is all about fundamentals, about possibilities and permission. Let's start with a reminder of why we might need to simplify. We all know that some Quaker ways are very simple, and some other Quaker ways are not so simple. The burden of administration is lying on the shoulders of a small group of Quakers, often in their 70s and 80s. At the same time, there is another group of Quakers who find difficulty in connecting with the ways in which we do some things, and so they tend to stand back. And that means that the system is at times creaking and sometimes may snap. And if we continue just with the ways that we currently do things, things are likely to get worse. Fortunately, though, there are lots of reasons to be hopeful. There are lots of possible ways of doing things that are already being used in different ways around Britain. Many Quakers are involved in thinking through how that can be done well. And one of the great strengths of the Society of Friends is that over the centuries we've been good at questioning things. We're good at finding new ways and new light. And we need to do this now because we're a different people from how we were several centuries ago, or say 60 years ago. The main chapters in Quaker Faith and Practice that are about church government, how we are organised, haven't been revised much since the 1960s. So what's changed since then? Well, compared with only a generation ago or 2 generations ago, a lot more of us are the only Quaker in our families. Quakers are generally older. People are joining as adults, particularly in older adulthood. So perhaps they don't come with the depth of understanding and the familiarity that we used to assume. As a group, we are smaller than we were. In the last 25 years, the number of members and attenders in Britain has fallen by 34%. That's over a third. And in the last 10 years alone, by 17%. That's a big change. And around us, society is more secular, it's much more regulated than it has been, lives are busier, we have new technologies, many more women are in the paid workforce than 2 generations ago. People are retiring later and then they may have more childcare commitments. There are fewer people available. So it's hardly surprising that ways that worked well 60 years ago don't fit so well now. We need to think about new ways of doing things to liberate us from some of our burdens. Less time for running Quakers and more time for being Quakers. I've had the chance to talk with friends right across Britain and it has been absolutely fascinating. I've been discovering that there is a great deal of variety. And this might be about our geography or the size of our area meeting or our local meetings. It could be the way that we organise our pastoral care or nurture the spiritual life of our meetings, or how we handle membership. It could be the place where we worship. Did you know that 30% of local meetings in Britain don't have a meeting house. 30%. Lots of them meet in a community centre or hall. Some are in church buildings, but there's huge variety. Several use art centres or museums. The two are in a St John's Ambulance Hall, or day centres, schools, therapy centres, people's homes, the library, a theatre. One meeting worships in the robing room of a courthouse, and one meets for worship in the Sweet Surprise Cafe. And this can be really quite a surprise if you've always known your Quakerism to be in a meeting house. And to jump ahead slightly to a later topic in the series, meeting without a meeting house is probably the biggest thing you can do to simplify a whole lot of things about the running of your meeting. And by the by, of all the meetings that are growing and have doubled their numbers in the last 10 years, 3/4 of them don't have a meeting house. That could point us towards our future. There are also many people whose Quakerism is focused on a special interest or on events, rather than the local meeting being the only way to relate to Quakerism. And we have the new phenomenon of online meetings that fit different times of day or are not limited by geography. About a dozen meetings, area meetings, are running online worship across the whole of their area meeting. And then there is a great variety of ways in which area meetings are organised. Here's a very basic example. I've been a Quaker most of my life, and in 4 different area meetings. I had no idea until I started this project that you could hold area meetings on a Saturday. They were always on a Sunday or perhaps on a Tuesday night. Meeting on a Saturday had just not been in my experience. And I mention this because I keep finding that there are Quakers who are very sure that this is the right way to do things, and this is the way it's always been done, and this is the way that it should be done. And yet in the next area along, or the next local meeting along, people are also sure that is the way to do things. That's the way it's always been done, and it should be done. But this one's way is not the same as that one. Surely they can't both be the only way. I used to find this rather puzzling. And then somebody rather helpfully put it to me that there is not one Quaker way, but there are many Quaker principles, and we should focus on those principles. So this isn't about finding one-size-fits-all solutions, do it like this, but multiple possibilities. It's like having a menu to choose from to suit your needs and your circumstances. As I was discovering these possibilities, I began to wonder if all this variation was allowed. It turns out there's a lot more permission for variations than I might have thought, certainly much more than I thought. In Quaker Faith and Practice, we have lots of permission to find the right way for our circumstances. The lists there very rarely say, you must do this in this way. It's more about how you might consider approaching things. I sat down with the people who you might say are the guardians of our church government, Paul Parker as recording clerk and Michael Booth as church government advisor. And I asked them, is it really possible to do this? Can people do it like that? How come this is being done in this way? And their repeated response has been, go back to the principles. Is this in line with our general way of approaching things, rather than the specific fine detail? And this matches the approach to the revision of our Book of Discipline. Quakers have been doing things differently for centuries, differently from other people, differently within Quakerism, and changing over time. There are many possibilities and a lot more permission than we often think. And those 2 P's, possibilities and permission, have been in my mind a lot. And then along came another P, the pandemic. And that's making us think differently. As we emerge from the pandemic, we can expect that some people will have changed their life priorities. And some meetings will change how they want to be and be in the world. One final thing. You know how you describe Quaker worship to other people? You might say, well, we sit quietly together in a circle in a big room and we listen. And people speak if they're moved to. And after an hour, we all shake hands. We've learnt by experience in 2020 that almost all of the things that we thought were essential parts of Quaker worship actually aren't. We don't shake hands anymore. Fair enough. We don't need to be in a room. We can worship outside. Many of us have experienced deep worship when we're not physically in the same place at all. We can worship together online or blended online and physically together. We can be all separately. We found that our worship doesn't have to be for an hour. And it doesn't have to be only on a Sunday morning. If we can do all these things differently in our worship and still be being Quakers, filled with the Spirit, together, then can we now imagine doing some of our other Quaker things differently too?